Hey, what's up? So this is a super short one, and basically, I had somebody tell me that their doctor or their chiropractor told them that they shouldn't deadlift if they want to be pain-free by the age of 60. Um, there's a couple of things that are really unhelpful by this statement. And by the way, this is something that happens all the time where doctors tell people that they should not do anything strenuous if they want to be pain free, or if they have some sort of injury that they should stop. And most people just take that either as face value and don't, because they think their doctor knows best because they're a doctor, or they get really frustrated and angry and try a bunch of shit and then they just mess themselves up more. Regardless, they're not feeling very pleasant. And more importantly, they're not, and none of this is really important without the context of, well, what do I really want, and where am I right now, and am I getting closer or further away? Am I closing that gap? That's always the question to be asking. And um, when doctors say these kinds of things, or chiropractors they say these kinds of things, you have to question it, because that's, if you just, then you have to logically start to look. Okay, this means, based on what he's saying, if anybody wants to be pain free in the age of 60 and beyond, they cannot lift deadlifts. Um, and so, okay, that means if I look at all the people who are pain free, do none of them deadlift? Well, that's false, because there's plenty of people age 60 and beyond, younger, who deadlift and do other types of strenuous activity. And there's just as many, if not more, people who are in constant daily pain and they've never lifted. So that's wrong. So that's not logical, because that means all the people who are not deadlifting should all be pain free, right? And so it's very, 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 very important to observe without any type of bias to get closer to the right answer, because otherwise you just take this stuff at face value. People say there's no there's no room for subtlety or nuance. All right. And this is something that messes up a lot of people, and it goes the other way too. There's people who are like, oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, and then they do it to the extent where it's beyond what is necessary to actually be pain free. And like, well, why do I even want to lift? Well, there's some inherent satisfaction to being strong, but also it feels good to be pain free and to do things in your day to day life without any strain or pain. And knowing that I can lift anything that I need to, or move or anything, and move in any type of way without any pain or limitation. Whereas a lot of people struggle with physical things because they don't have the necessary level, baseline level of strength or stamina or endurance, right? People get winded if they have to walk up a flight of stairs holding a box, right? God forbid they need to run down the street real quick. That's not a possibility, you know. People are out of breath. And so that's one of the things about the strength method, the principles that are important to us. One of them is that you will have more than the required amount of strength to do anything in your life. You will not have just enough, you will have more than required, because then we want to have room in there so that there's wiggle room. Like, you don't want to barely just have enough, because then that's where bad things can happen. You want to have way more than enough. And so we define that, like, what does that actually mean? How do you achieve that? And so that's important. But this kind of stuff where doctors say these things, you have to start to think for yourself. You have to think critically. You have to have nuance. You have to have subtlety. It's not simple. Like, yeah, you know what? That doing it this way takes more awareness. It takes more equanimity, which is evenness of temper. It means you got to be able to not get super high or super low or be very invested in what the answer is, right? You got to just be able to observe and then based on the observations make a decision like which direction you want to go in. Which direction you want to go in that actually then closes the gap. Without that direction or that destination, it doesn't really matter what you do. Like, do you need to be pain free? No. Many people, most people, live their lives in physical pain. You don't have to be pain free. It's a choice. It's a preference, right? And most people will never find the answer. But if you look for the answer, you will find it if you continue to ask questions and stay objective. Right? And that's all that matters, and then you can continue to close the gap. And this is the most important thing. Whether you find it from me or you find it from some other coach or whatever it is, this is not new stuff. This does not belong to anybody. Different people organize it differently, but the principles are all there. So just be aware of that. Oh, if you want to be pain free, don't deadlift. Or if you want to be pain free after 60, don't deadlift. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life, right? Processed food is bad for you. What is so? Does that mean that there are no healthy people who eat processed food? Does that mean that all people who eat no processed food are healthy? Both of those answers are no, right? So there's something more to this question than just this thing is good, this thing is bad. And it's almost never going to be that clear cut where it's like, oh, blank, fill in the blank is bad for you. It's always subtleties and nuances and context. And yeah, that's not, a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't have the ability. Well, they have the ability, but they won't do it because it's much easier to access just emotional shit and just go with the emotion and attach your identity to something like, well, I'm all about strength training and just, ridicule people like this doctor, and which doesn't help. It doesn't help, right? I can still make a decision without needing to ridicule somebody. So, anyways, we'll leave it at that for today. Silly people saying silly things that end conversations. You can't even go anywhere from there. We'll talk more about that. So I'll talk to you later. Um, Catch me on Instagram at Ranbir Sanghera.